Those were the days. Welcome to Buckeye Preview, everybody. I'm Tyler Carey. That picture you just saw was of former Ohio State coach Jim Tressel and current Michigan State head coach Mark D'Antonio during D'Antonio's 3-year tenure at Cincinnati. That was when D'Antonio was fresh off being Tressel's first defensive coordinator at Ohio State. Oh, how the tables have turned. D'Antonio is now at Michigan State, and Jim Tressel, of course, is gone. Will this be the first time D'Antonio is able to upset the school that developed him into the coach he is? He is 0-4. We shall see. I will be talking about that later. Now, we'll discuss Ohio State last week. They finally were able to get a decent win against, well, not a good team, but a named team, beating Colorado by 20. Braxton Miller in his first start was 5 of 13 for 83 yards passing and 2 touchdowns. Also ran for 83 yards on the ground. Not too bad for his first start, but in order for Ohio State to beat Michigan State, those stats, especially in a passing game, are going to have to get much better. I'll talk about that later. But before that, let's get to the scores from last week, the notable ones anyway. Down in Morgantown, West Virginia, LSU beat up the Mountaineers 47-21. With the win, LSU moved into the #1 spot in the Associated Press college football poll, supplanting Oklahoma. Speaking of Oklahoma, the Oklahoma State Cowboys went to College Station last Saturday, and after being down 17 points in the first half, upset Texas A&M 30-29. Oklahoma State is now ranked 5th. They are 4-0. Many people are now looking at their last game of the season already with Oklahoma. Could we have an undefeated matchup for a trip to the national championship game? It's a long way off, but that would be pretty cool to see. Florida State is now 2-2. Such high hopes for the Seminoles. They went down to Clemson, South Carolina, and lost to the Tigers 35-30. It is the first time in decades that Clemson has beaten back-to-back ranked opponents. They are now ranked in the top 15, and some have them as a sleeper pick for the national championship. Again, a long way away. They go to Virginia Tech this week, yet another test. A little more locally for all of you Notre Dame fans out there. Notre Dame beating Pittsburgh 15-12, coming from behind from a 5-point deficit. Late in the game, score a touchdown. The Irish are now 2-2. They will take on Purdue this week. Fans of the school up north, Michigan beat San Diego State by a score of 28-7 last week. Denard Robinson again with another great rushing performance. And defense didn't look too bad either as Brady Hoke beat the school he coached for the last 2 years. Locally, Kent State finally got their first win of the year, beating FCS opponent South Alabama 33-25 here in Kent. It didn't look all that great, but a win's a win. Darrell Hazel getting his first victory as a college football head coach. Akron got their first win of the year, beating the Virginia Military Institute 36-13. They were 0-3, looking even worse than Kent. It is just the second win for Coach Rob Ianello in his second season. And in high school football, Twinsburg picked up their third win of the year, beating Brush in a homecoming game by a score of 48-27, led by running back John Barton's 6 touchdowns. He already has 14 on the season. Give him the scholarship already, Fickle. Now, of course, that was a homecoming game. I gotta say, I had a great time at homecoming this weekend. Could have been a little bit better, but first time there, not too bad. Anyway, now that I've gotten through the scores, let's preview this week's opponent. The Big Ten opener for the Buckeyes, the Michigan State Spartans.
Michigan State began its football program in 1896 and officially joined the Big Ten in 1949. Since that year, the Spartans have won the conference 7 times and have been to 4 Rose Bowls. They have also won 2 national titles, the last being in 1965. The Spartans have never had a Heisman winner, but 8 Spartans are in the College Football Hall of Fame, including Coach Duffy Daugherty and lineman Bubba Smith. MSU was called Spartan Stadium home since 1923, the 6th largest stadium in the Big Ten with a capacity of over 75,000.
Before I forget, 2 of my good friends in the Twinsburg band drill team wanted me to give them a shout out this week. Brooke and Jamie, thank you very much for watching Buckeye Preview. Keep on rooting for the Buckeyes, even though this may not be the best time to do so. Well, now that that's out of the way, back to the stats. Michigan State this year has been picked as one of the top teams in the Big Ten Conference. And so far they have a 3-1 record, their only loss on the road to Notre Dame. However, their 3 wins have been against very inferior competition. Youngstown State, Florida Atlantic, Central Michigan. All teams that are not only not in BCS conferences, they are bad teams in their low-level conferences. So really, Michigan State has not been tested, except for at Notre Dame, and they were manhandled 31-13. Now, when going up against Ohio State, I think one of the keys to the game is going to be their running attack. We all saw how Ohio State ran into problems defensively when they gave up some big rushing plays to the Miami running backs. That got them off their footing early and led to that crushing defeat down in South Beach. Michigan State has 2 very good running backs. Edwin Baker, who rushed for over 1,200 yards last year, and Le'Veon Bell, who rushed for over 600. Both averaged nearly 6 yards per carry. Michigan State obviously had one of the top running attacks in the Big Ten on their way to sharing the conference championship. This year, the rushing numbers have been a little bit of a disappointment, especially with the competition that they have had. Bell and Baker have been very good, averaging both about 5 yards a carry, but their yards are down a bit. Both are on pace to rush for only about 700 yards each. That's a far cry from where they had last year when they combined for almost 1,900 yards. And Michigan State as a team is rushing for just 143 yards per game, which is not terrible, but it is 40 yards less than Ohio State and just 3.7 yards per carry. Now, again, not terrible, but considering the competition that they have gone up against, you would think that that would be much higher. That could be a benefit for Ohio State. If they can stop the running attack and get themselves on that footing that they lost against Miami, it could lead them to a good day. But, as I mentioned, Baker and Bell have been pretty decent this season. And if they can break out a couple of runs like Miami did against Ohio State a couple of weeks ago, it's going to be a long afternoon for the Buckeyes, who, by the way, on the defensive line will still be without Nathan Williams, one of their top players. He is sidelined with a knee injury and will not be back until at least next week's game at Nebraska. So, Michigan State also has a very good passing attack, but I don't think it's going to be much of an issue for Ohio State. Their pass defense looked pretty good even in the Miami game. On the flip side, this is where we're going to have real problems. Michigan State, as a defense, gives up only 172 yards per game. That is tops in the Big Ten. The best overall yards defense in the Big Ten. They are also giving up only 11 points per game. That is 4th in the Big Ten. As a team on average, rushing and passing, Ohio State only averages about 340 yards per game. That is 12th in the Big Ten, dead last. It is not a good formula for us anyway, when you put our low-ranked offense against not only a highly ranked defense, but the highly ranked defense thus far in the conference. Granted, Michigan State has gone against inferior competition, as I've said before. And it could be hope for us that in their one real test against the Fighting Irish, they were pretty much dominated throughout, on defense as well. But this is not what Braxton Miller needs in his second start ever, going against, from Colorado, a very bad defensive team, to Michigan State, a team that, built on its defense, is supposed to lead them to a possible Big Ten championship. They only give up 101 yards per game passing. That is very, very good. And especially when Ohio State's passing offense is ranked in the triple digits nationally, I don't think that Braxton Miller is going to have a very easy time this coming Saturday. This is going to be As far as Big Ten openers go, this is not what you want to get started off with when you are running for the Rose Bowl. Well, now that I have discussed that, let's get to this week's classic game. 6 years ago, in Ohio Stadium, the homecoming game between the 15th ranked Buckeyes and the 16th ranked Spartans.
We pick up the action in the first quarter. Michigan State ahead 3-0, kicking off to Ohio State. And a tactical error. The ball is muffed, and Michigan State recovers inside the 10-yard line. And this would set up this short rushing touchdown right here. And the Spartans lead by a score of 10-0. Second quarter, it's 10-7. Now Michigan State, Drew Stanton firing over the middle, has his man for another touchdown at 17-7. But then the tables would turn. Michigan State lining up for a field goal near the end of the half. They only had 10 men on the field. Ohio State blocks it. They will take it all the way in for a touchdown. Just stupid football by Michigan State, and their head coach, John L. Smith, is
We should have been in the ball game with fast field goal. The coach had sent him in. We shouldn't have sent him in. That's a dang coaching mistake. The kids are playing their tail off, and the coaches are screwing it up.
That would set the tone. Third quarter, Ohio State, Troy Smith throwing to Ted Ginn, who will break free for the go-ahead touchdown. 4-point lead for the Buckeyes, their first of the afternoon. However, Michigan State would not go quietly. Stanton handing off again for another touchdown, leading by 3 in the third quarter. Fourth quarter, Buckeyes still down. Troy Smith fires for Santonio Holmes, and this would be the big play. Holmes keeping his balance, diving into the end zone for a touchdown, his second of the game, and Michigan State one last gasp. Ohio State sacked Michigan State 12 times in the afternoon. This fumble would not count. Buckeyes would add another touchdown, go on to win 35-24.
Now let's get to my prediction. A little new thing we're going to do this week. I'm going to go kind of semi-Lee Corso style. If I think the Buckeyes are going to win, I will put the hat on with the block O facing out. If I think they're going to lose, which I had never predicted before on Buckeye Preview, should be noted, I will put it on backwards, because it's always backwards when the Buckeyes do not come out on top. I have mentioned it before. This is a tough test. The Buckeyes are favored. I was a little bit surprised by that. Michigan State might be unranked, but they are a lot better than their 3-1 record shows. They've got the ability to win the Big Ten Conference. They shared the conference last year. Ohio State is still awaiting the return of 5 suspended players that they will not get back until next week's game at Nebraska. I already mentioned Michigan State's defense being number 1, going up against Ohio State's offense dead last. Even though it is improving, I don't know if they can improve fast enough to face Michigan State and be successful. There could be hope. Again, Michigan State looked bad against Notre Dame. It could be a factor. They have not beaten Ohio State in over a decade. So maybe that will just have them screwed up in the head. It happens. It can get to you psychologically, and you just can't beat a team, especially with 105,000 fans in Ohio Stadium. While I really want to pick the Buckeyes, and Brooke and Jamie, I know how you want me to be so optimistic. On paper, it's a mismatch. For the first time in the history of Buckeye Preview, I am predicting an Ohio State loss, 20-13. Michigan State will beat Ohio State this Saturday in Columbus. I really hope I'm wrong. I pray to God I'm wrong. But as a journalist, I consider myself a journalist, I have to make the decision that makes sense on paper. Let's hope they can prove me an idiot. Until next week rather, I'm Tyler Carey. Thank you for watching Buckeye Preview. Be sure to follow me on Twitter and Facebook. Go Bucks!